had the honor and privilege of working with Dr. Lefebvre this past fall semester to conduct our senior thesis. The title of our study is Belonging Opportunity for Social Support, otherwise known as B.O.S.S. I'm Caroline Mitchell.
I'm Lilly Guerrero.
I'm Lydia Lupo.
I'm Kaytlin Greenwood.
I'm Isabel Astwood.
And I'm Lilly Griffin.
So to better understand the study we're presenting to y'all today, it's really important that we understand what belonging is. Belonging is the feeling that an individual has when they feel accepted, valued, included, and socially integrated with those around them. Now, it's an important concept to understand as it's been shown to directly impact individual psychological well-being. Previous research has shown that belonging is a basic psychological need humans have that needs to be successfully fostered in order for them to feel a sense of connection with those around them. Belonging needs to be successfully promoted in order for individuals to thrive in their environments. These are things such as within the community, within different learning communities, within the school system, within the workplace, or even within individual friend groups.
Like Lilly said, it's evident that belonging plays an important role in our everyday lives. Sense of belonging is tested a lot, and it is often seen that college is one of the hardest times in this transition period where a sense of belonging is lacking. College is the first time where students are outside of their comfort zone, they're away from family, from friends, and they're forced to kind of make their own identity and create their own sense of belonging. So the transition looks different for everybody. You have some students who are athletes that come in with a predetermined group of friends where all they need to do is kind of foster those friendships. On the other hand, you have students that might be in minority groups or those that are first-generation college students who ultimately lack that sense of belonging that is so crucial during the first few months of college.
Previous research has looked at using group-based interventions for first-year students that involve looking at written testimonies from upperclassmen that show the first-year students that any adverse experiences that they may have in their first year is normal and even expected. For outcomes, they looked at retention rates and GPA to determine if their interventions were effective. However, their outcomes were inconclusive, and this could be because of the group-based intervention and not having a one-on-one experience, or only looking at retention rates and GPA instead of psychological outcomes. And that's where our study comes in.
So as previously mentioned, we decided to focus on college students, specifically first-year students that are going through this initial transition from high school to college. And we really honed in on belongingness because this is an important factor that a lot of college students kind of develop over their time at their institutions. So for our pilot study, we focused on in-person guided activities that focused specifically on students' psychological outcomes and didn't really focus necessarily on retention and GPA. And we hypothesized that there would be significant effects of measures of psychological well-being for first years.
So when conducting our study, we had a total of 41 first-year students that were recruited from current FYI classes here at Wofford. 31 of those were females, 9 were males, and then 1 classified themselves as being non-binary. There are a variety of races and ethnicities present. Of that 41%, of those 41 students, 14% were involved in special interest activities or clubs. So those are things like WAC or RUF. And it's very important to note this statistic as those individuals have kind of already been able to develop a sense of connection with those within those clubs and activities. This other percentage shown, that 22%, represents almost a quarter of our total participants. This is also very important to note because those students have reported not currently being involved in anything at Wofford. These 41 participants were randomly assigned into 2 groups. We have our B.O.S.S group, which was our group that received our intervention, our Belonging Opportunity for Social Support group, and our LOU group, which is our Life as Usual group, which was our control group. Now, you may be wondering why these groups are not evenly distributed, and that's because we experienced attrition when going through our participants, and we could not successfully distribute them equally.
So as far as the actual procedure of our experiment, it was split into 2 sessions. In session 1, both the B.O.S.S and Life as Usual conditions first signed a consent form, and then they were then given assessments on things like mood, stress, loneliness, belonging, depressive symptomatology, and social anxiety. For the Life as Usual condition, this is where their first session ended, but for our B.O.S.S condition, they then received an intervention, which Lydia will now describe.
So to orient towards what our intervention would have looked like for first-year students, we've included a short excerpt from the video of what an upperclassman student said that they struggled with most and how they overcame it. So we gathered up several of these videos and compiled them into about a 5-minute video, but this is what first-year student may have experienced.
Freshman year, I especially felt out of place. I feel like a lot of people like to go out and make new friends and kind of enjoy the outgoing environment, whereas I tended to like to stay in and watch movies or go visit my friends from home, which was kind of a struggle for me. But I think that taking the time to meeting people slowly and on my own accord really helped with letting my guard down and meeting new people and making the experience better. So yeah, I think time and just being honest with myself and not pushing the boundaries was how I got over it.
Okay, so after watching that compilation of upperclassmen testimonies, the B.O.S.S participants were asked to reflect on anything that stood out to them, maybe anything they related to in the video, and then finally they were asked to make a plan for what they would do in the week before session 2 that they felt could increase their own belonging on campus. So this was just 1 or 2 concrete things, like maybe joining a club or talking to a new person. And then after a week had passed, both participant groups came back and were asked to recomplete those same assessments from before on stress and anxiety. And then our B.O.S.S participants were asked to reflect on how effective that they felt their plan was, if they saw any effects themselves, that kind of thing. And finally, they were asked to give some advice to future freshmen on just how to increase their belonging on campus and ease that transition.
So looking at the results from our study from the belonging barometer, when there are higher measures of belongingness, there were lower measures of stress, depressive symptomatology, and social interaction anxiety. And then looking at the results from our sense of belonging scale, when there were higher measures of sense of belonging, there were lower measures of stress, depressive symptomatology, and social interaction anxiety. And then finally, looking at the UCLA loneliness scale, when there were higher measures of loneliness, there were also higher measures of stress, depressive symptomatology, and social interaction anxiety. And when we ran a multivariate analysis, pre and post, we found no significant results.
Upon analyzing our results, we found various themes to present themselves specifically when looking at the response to survey question number 2. We found that many students stated that they needed to learn to be themselves and not fixate on others' opinions. Many students expressed that they were constantly comparing themselves to other people's transitions, essentially leaving them with feelings of uncertainty. And so they kind of expressed that they needed to seek their validation internally as compared to externally. Additionally, we found that students didn't know to expect an adjustment period, so that was a very common theme that we saw. And many students needed to learn to just give themselves grace and patience and realize that everyone transitions at their own pace. Lastly, we found a common theme of stepping outside of your comfort zone, but still respecting your limits. So while this might still look like going to interest fairs and trying out new clubs, essentially staying true to who you are and who you want to be.
So to thoughtfully summarize the data from the bivariate results, as well as the qualitative data that does suggest a theme of belongingness having an inverse relationship on these negative mental health results, we have found that there does need to be an intervention developed for belongingness to target things such as mental health, academic success, and even postgraduate success, as students feel like they can adjust to their different life challenges that they may address later. So with our study, we ran a pilot study, so with that being said, we didn't do a power analysis to determine how many participants we needed because the effect sizes were simply too small. We can adjust this in 2 ways, one being gathering more participants. Wofford has an incoming class of about 500 students every year, so there really is no shortage of students we can collect from, especially as the FY courses start to integrate this as mandatory. Secondly, we would like to script the videos that you saw in the intervention to address the qualitative themes that we found so that more students can end up relating more and even having a bigger impact in their responses to the intervention. If significance is found in the future studies of this, we would like to implement a study that we have called FOSSI, a facilitated facilitated one-session support intervention, which is when upperclassmen students are trained in facilitating the intervention to the first-year students. So Wofford actually has really good candidates for this already, one being upperclassmen psychology students, given that they understand themes that would be relevant to implementing this with first-year students, as well as O-staff leaders who are already trained in honing these soft skills to connect with first-year students and ease their transitions. So hopefully with these future directions in place, we should find better significance.
We would like
like to thank Dr. Lefebvre for guiding us through our research, as well as the first years who participated in our study, and the upperclassmen who are part of our intervention. And of course, all of you for coming and listening to us today. Does anyone have any questions?
Question, Dr. Metz.
So your B.O.S.S plan, or your B.O.S.S program had kind of two parts to it. You had the intervention and you had the act of the students kind of making a plan. Do you feel like one was more important than the other in kind of getting to those qualitative themes? Do you think there would, and kind of as follow-up, do you think there would be any benefit to having that planning portion within the life as usual kind of group as well?
Well, we kind of integrated them together, so they were making their plan based off of examples they had seen in the videos, so we encouraged them to be like, is there anything you saw in the video that you think may help specifically for you? So, but I think having a planning just to control any confounding variables in life as usual could be helpful.
I think it was one of your first couple of slides, but you said 14% of your students were involved in clubs and then the other 22 were not, I think. Is that, what were the rest of the percentage of the students involved in?
Yeah, so the other ones were we had a small percentage that were athletes. We had a small percentage that were...
A lot were involved in multiple things at once.
Yeah, so an option was other, so that could be pretty much anything else. I think we had an option for Greek life. We had an option for athletics, religious-based organizations.
The majority just weren't involved in anything yet.
Yeah. Just because they haven't had the chance to.
Yeah.
I apologize if you already answered this. How did you recruit the group of 41 students?
Yeah, so we all went to the professors from Student Life for their FYI classes, and we went and asked if they would have any interest in participating in our study. And the professors agreed to give them an Experiencing Wofford credit, I believe is what it was called, if they participated. So.
Do you have any feel for how the belongingness and the loneliness related to other first-year college student populations? Because I did a study once, and I was collaborating with some people at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm looking at the Wofford population and the Chapel Hill population, and we were looking at all sorts of different factors. But the biggest predictor we found was the school, and Wofford was a lot higher on belongingness, but it wasn't first-year students. So
yeah, we did look when we were doing our previous research. We did find research that showed the difference between four-year institutions and two-year institutions, and how belonging compares on that scale. Which it did show that four-year institutions typically showed higher levels just because they had more time to develop relationships with their other classmates. In terms of directly understanding how it compares to other specific institutions, we didn't exactly research that aspect, but that is an interesting thing to consider.
Kind of going off of that, Wofford is, as we know, a private, very small liberal arts college. How do you think this study, do you think the results would look differently if it were something like a university like Clemson that doesn't have FYI to help already with that transition? How do you think this would look for schools like that?
Absolutely. We did a lot of research beforehand on previous literature that looked at big schools, a lot of public education schools, as well as tech schools. So, and what they found a lot of times was that the population looked a lot different. So the results that we were finding were more indicative of maybe race affiliation, first-generation students, and things like that. They might have impacted their sense of belongingness, but we're a very unique we're a very unique college in the fact that we do have FYI. We did not find any, I personally did not see any literature that had something similar to that, except maybe there was one study that looked at extra credit for homework, and part of their homework help was a belongingness intervention, but that also targeted such a small population that it really wasn't applicable to us because every single student, or most students, do go through FYI.
All right. Well done, y'all. Let's give them a hand.